Hi all. Today talking about ensuring plugin GPL compatibility via GitHub Actions. A little bit more about me, Director of Open Source Initiatives at 10up on pretty much every social platform, including our own .org, GitHub, and Twitter or X. I'm at Jeff Paul, also online, jeffpaul.com. If you're going to take a picture of a slide today because you want to get notes, this is the one because my slides are up on my website, jeffpaul.com. Also because there's a really nice picture of me on there too. That's from Reykjavik, the Rainbow Road there from the 10up Summit earlier this year. 10up's about 300 people, fully distributed, fully remote, focused on crafting websites, apps, and tools for content creators while being mindful and contributing back to the open web, which is the foundation upon which 10up and many of our businesses, if not all, are built upon. A little bit more about that open source practice. It was founded or formalized in 2019 when I joined the company, now up to 10 members strong. Again, all focused on crafting a better open web, of which this project, Wordpress, is a part of. Part of that work is contributing to WordPress core. So across major releases, ensuring that 10uppers are contributing in core, docs, editor, wherever it may be, finding their skill sets and helping them find places across major releases, just like 6.3, which came out recently, and the 17 10uppers that were active there. Another part of our practice is maintaining a suite of about 24 plugins, most available on the .org repo. Some examples: Classify, which leverages cloud-based services like Microsoft Azure AI, IBM Watson, and OpenAI, all very hot right now, right? And by using those providers, it supercharges WordPress content workflows and engagement with AI functionality. And Distributor helps syndicate content and content reuse across websites. And ElasticPress brings the power of Elasticsearch to WordPress sites. So those and many of our others available on .org and all maintained on GitHub, which will come into play here in a minute. So if you're familiar with distributing plugins on WordPress.org, the plugin team has a handbook, right? And there are requirements, there are guidelines that you must follow in order to, when you submit a plugin, get accepted into the repo, and ideally follow those throughout the versions from there. The first one that's listed is plugins must be compatible with the GPL. Digging in a little deeper, that means not just the code, right? That means images, fonts. Are those GPL compatible? And dependencies, right? If you're bundling something with your plugin, also needs to be GPL compatible. Now, get into a little bit of nightmare scenarios here, right? What if somebody contributes a PR to your project, or somebody on your team, or you yourself, if you are a single contributor for a plugin and you introduce a new dependency, or potentially a dependency gets updated and there is an incompatible license. You declare that you are distributing GPL v2 or later, right? But are you? Or potentially the worser scenario is you already aren't actually using third-party dependencies that are GPL compatible, right? Welcome to the life of the director of open source and things that actually, unfortunately, wake you up in the middle of the night. So fortunately, those of you on GitHub, GitHub Actions comes to the rescue and can help out here. It can help you check for those new dependencies that are introduced. It can help check for updated dependencies. It can help check that those are actually compatible with the license you are saying your plugin is distributed under. It can, if you aren't already aware, it can scan that whole code base and report back and say, yep, no incompatible licenses. And then ongoing, scan all pull requests to make sure that, again, if somebody introduces a new dependency, if a pull request updates a dependency and that license happens to change, make sure that you continue to be compatible as you declare your project to be. So at 10up, we make use of one of GitHub's official actions, the dependency review action. There are some others that we tested out. This one just happened to work for our case, and this is the example I'm going to show you here today. So first off, you'll add a dependency, the dependency review action workflow file to your repo, and that basically will say run against all pull requests and use this action to scan for compatible licenses. You'll make sure that the licenses that are compatible with what you're declaring are mentioned, as that's what the action will check against. And you'll wait for the results of those scans of the code base, fingers crossed, right? And then again, all future PRs will continue to be checked against those licenses that you have in this policy. Optionally, if you maintain multiple projects, you can have a policy of the licenses are compatible hosted in a central repository you maintain, and all your projects can point back to that single file so that if there's a new license that gets approved and is GPL compatible, it can be added in one place instead of 24, like in the case of 10up. So this is a little small here, which is why you took a picture of that first slide where I looked really nice in Reykjavik. But what we're looking at here is our project, insert special characters. And in here, within the .github folder and then within the workflows folder is the dependency review action. There's a lot of comments in here for anybody that does pull this up to be helpful, but the most mindful thing in here is eventually we are using that dependency review action, and then further on down there is a list of allowed licenses that we've done the research and know to be compatible with the license that we declared, in this case for insert special characters, to be compatible. The action alternatively does have a deny list, but it seems to be a more prudent approach to include things that you know to be compatible instead of trying to exclude all the ones that aren't, and then potentially some other one isn't included, and now you've got some things getting through that should not be. So like I said, here's another version of insert special characters, the same workflow file, but at the very bottom, there is a variable here for that config file, which we host in the .github repo for the 10up organization. And then taking a look at that file that we're linking out to here, effectively just includes those licenses in this central file. This is what we maintain and check against all of our repositories. They all point back to this file. The actual licenses that we have in here, we pulled from new.org, also reviewed with spdx.org, which references things that are Free Software Foundation, Free or Libre, as well as the Open Source Initiative approved licenses. But really the crux of what we have here is coming from new.org that they declare as GPL compatible. So that first run against your code base, a little nerve-wracking, right? Like, do you know for certain that everything you have is compatible, right? So you've declared we're GPL or GPL v2 compatible. Sit back and wait for that GitHub action to run. If in the scenario where you run into issues and it says this dependency is not compatible with what you say it should be, simply, fix that, right? Potentially remove that dependency, swap it out for something else, and then release an updated version. That's probably the best you can do in this case. I would call it out in the change log. I would call it out in the README. Make sure it's obvious that this version is updated because it is now compatible with what you declared it to be. So then from there, you did that first scan. Now you want to scan all pull requests, right? So that action will run on all PRs that get opened, whether that's you as the repo owner, somebody on your team, or if you've got people contributing from the community, we'll also check theirs. That check, again, is against those licenses that you declared, and you're not waking up in the middle of the night worried that you are bundling incompatible licenses. So that's the long and short of it. Again, reiterating here, you've got that GitHub action that's created, that workflow file. You've got optionally a policy that you link out to if you're maintaining multiple repos, multiple projects, multiple plugins. check that code base, fix it if you run into issues, and then otherwise let this keep running, and you will know for certain that your plugin is for sure GPL compatible. Again, whether that's GPL v2, whether that's MIT, whether that's BSD 3 clause, it'll be compatible with what you say it should be. Again, if you've got questions, jeff.paul@10up.com, where I'm the director of open source, and again, @JeffPaul across most social platforms. And that's all. Thank you.